couple of days ago, I was looking through an old journal and I came across something that, when it happened a couple of years ago, absolutely blew my mind, and it did again now. So I thought I'd share it with you and see how useful it is to you. It's about the way that we store our memories, the way that we remember things, and how it can have a very different impact on our lives. My daughter's very involved in the local youth theatre company, and out of her many hobbies, it's probably her favourite. And a few years ago, they were auditioning for their next play. And when she came home from the audition, she was really excited because she knew which part she wanted to get. And she likes playing the comedy roles. So she said, I want to get the part of the silly idiot. And all she talked about all week was, I hope I get the part of the silly idiot. I hope I get the part of the silly idiot. So when she went the next week, of course, I'm hoping that she's got that part as well, because I'm thinking if she didn't, she's going to be very disappointed. When she came out of the next rehearsal, she'd got a big smile on her face. I thought, fantastic, she's got the part. But what really surprised me is she hadn't. And she said, it's brilliant, I got the part of, and told me what the part was, which is great because, and then she gave me a list of all the things that were great about that part. And I thought, what a fantastic attitude. I think most adults at that point would be disappointed, and to be able to see the positives was just such a great thing. And I was really proud of her, obviously. What difference would it make to our lives if we continued to ask ourselves the question, here's the situation, what are the good points about it? What are the positives in it? But what really blew my mind about it was a couple of days later, when she's having breakfast, she's deep in thought, and then she looked across at me and said, I'm so happy that I got the part that I wanted in that play. That really blew my mind because she'd forgotten that she didn't get the part that she wanted. She'd literally created a different memory. Now, neuroscience tells us that when we have the same thought over and over again, we literally fuse together some neurons, which is what creates the neural pathways. It's not what happens to us that creates memories. It's how we think about what happens to us that we remember. Nothing is either good or bad, it's the thinking that makes it so. Think about that for a second, because the implications of that are huge. What do you think about if something doesn't go to plan? Do you blame circumstances and effectively put yourself at the mercy of future circumstances? Do you beat yourself up for doing a bad job, or do you blame other people? Or do you think about what are the good points about the situation? The difference is, what will you remember in a week's time? Will you remember that you did a presentation and it didn't go to plan and you wanted the ground to swallow you up? Or will you remember that you spoke to 50 people and you got a round of applause at the end of it? In a month's time, you've probably consciously forgotten about the event altogether, apart from somewhere in there, you've got an event that you've either labelled as being a good experience or a bad experience. Have you ever used the photo sharing website Flickr or the note-taking application Evernote? Even if you haven't, I know you'll get the concept really easily. When you upload a photograph to Flickr, you can store it in an album. When you put a note in Evernote, you can store it in a notebook. It's very much like putting things in folders on your computer. Another thing that you can do is you can use tags. And the tag is just another name for a label. So when you upload a photograph, you can put the tag or label on it of maybe holidays or birthdays. And then when you're searching for photographs, you can find photographs that match the tag birthday and Bob, for example, and it brings back the ones that match. The really cool thing is you're not limited to using one or the other. You can use a combination of tags and directories. You can make up your own way of storing things that make sense to you. Would it surprise you to know that when we store in memories, our mind works in a very similar way? It shouldn't surprise you really, because a lot of things in the computer world mirror the way that our minds work, because after all, we had to get the idea for these things from somewhere. When it comes to my daughter, she got the part in the play that she got, and that can't be changed. But what can be changed is the way that she chooses to store and process the memory. She could have put it in a directory, maybe something like things that didn't go to plan. And maybe she could have labelled it with the word disappointments. Or maybe instead, she chose to store it in a directory of things that went the way that I wanted to. And maybe she tagged it with something like great moments in life. And it's fascinating that the way that she chose to store it, the way that she processed it, affects the memory. She literally changed what she remembered about the incident. Now that blows my mind. If it doesn't blow yours, I don't know if anything ever will. Science knows that most memories are not true. It's simply what we choose to remember about the situation. That's why when there's an accident, the police don't just want one witness statement. They want statements from as many people as possible so that they can try and piece together what they think happened, because they know that most people's memories will be flawed. I also love a quote from Winston Churchill, who said, "It's never too late to have a happy childhood." And imagine if that were true. Because that would mean that not only can we choose the way that we store memories when they're actually happening, it'd mean that we can go back and we can recategorize and retag them later. Think of the implications of that. I could go on all day hypothesizing about this, how our memories are not objectively true, and that we don't remember what happens to us, we remember what we thought about what happens to us. And it's interesting stuff. But what's really interesting is, how are you going to ensure that from now on, when you're creating memories, how are you going to make sure that you're creating them and storing them in the most empowering way?